The red dust of Mars swirled outside the colony's protective dome as Tom Miller finished his evening patrol. He walked through the quiet streets of New Hope Colony, checking the seals on the environmental barriers. The setting sun cast long shadows across the buildings, making the colony look peaceful. Too peaceful. That's when the alarm started. Unknown ships entering Mars airspace. The automated system blared. All residents to emergency shelters immediately. Tom's heart stopped. His daughter Kate was still at the school dome with 11 other children, finishing their evening science project. He pressed his wrist communicator. Kate, do you copy? Dad, her voice crackled through. There are weird lights in the sky. The transmission cut off as 5 massive ships appeared overhead, their hulls gleaming with an odd scale-like pattern that shifted colors in the dying sunlight. They were unlike anything humanity had encountered before. Tom ran. His boots kicked up red dust as he sprinted toward the school dome, but he was too far. The strange ships moved with impossible speed, positioning themselves around the colony's key structures. A bright beam shot down from the largest vessel, cutting through the school dome's protective shields like they were paper. All security forces converge on the school dome. Tom shouted into his communicator. Code red. Code red. They're targeting the children. But the aliens had planned this well. Smaller ships dropped from the mother vessels, creating a perimeter. When the colony's defense forces tried to approach, they found themselves blocked by energy fields. They could only watch in horror as more beams of light penetrated the school dome. Inside the school, Kate grabbed the hands of 2 younger children. At 12, she was one of the oldest students still working on the science fair projects. Everyone under the tables, she ordered, trying to sound brave like her father had taught her. The ceiling crackled with strange energy, and figures began to appear. They were tall, easily 7 feet, with bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted colors like their ships. Their eyes were large and golden, with vertical pupils that reminded Kate of cats. Small ones, one of the aliens spoke in a clicking voice that somehow translated itself. Perfect size. Undamaged. Stay back, Kate shouted, picking up a chair. The alien merely waved a device, and all the children found themselves unable to move. Outside, Tom and the other security forces could only watch in helpless rage as beams of light lifted 12 children into the alien ships. The aliens seemed to ignore the adults completely, focused entirely on their young prizes. You can't do this, Tom screamed, firing his weapon uselessly at the energy barrier. They're children. They're just children. One of the scaled aliens turned to look at him, its head tilting in what seemed like amusement. Weak species, it clicked. Offspring will serve better purpose with bright-scale nobility. Be honored. They will live in palaces. The alien turned away, dismissing the humans' resistance as insignificant. That was their first mistake. They didn't see the look in Tom's eyes, didn't understand what it meant. They didn't know that in that moment, they had awakened something that would hunt them across the stars. As the ships rose into the Martian sky, Kate pressed her hand against the energy field holding her. She caught a last glimpse of her father below, and even from this height, she could see him fall to his knees. Dad will come, she whispered to the younger children. He'll find us. They all will. The alien standing guard near them made an amused sound. Small ones should sleep now. Long journey to new home. A sweet-smelling gas filled their containment area. As Kate felt herself growing drowsy, she remembered something her father had taught her. If you're ever taken, stay smart. Stay alive. We will never stop looking for you. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Mars growing smaller below them, and the stars spreading out ahead. The bright scales congratulated themselves on their successful raid, confident in their superiority. They had no idea they had just made the worst mistake in their species' history. In the colony below, Tom Miller stood up slowly, his face set in grim determination. He keyed his communicator, switching to an emergency frequency that linked directly to Earth. "This is Security Chief Miller of New Hope Colony. Code Black. I repeat, Code Black. 12 children taken by hostile aliens. Request immediate activation of Protocol Zero." There was a moment of silence before the response came. "Understood, Chief Miller. God help those bastards. Protocol Zero is now in effect." The hunt was about to begin. The slave markets of Station 7 were always busy, but today's crowd was different. Word had spread quickly about the Bright Scale's latest catch, strange young creatures from a developing world. Blue watched from his trading stall as the scaled aliens paraded their prizes through the market's main hall. Blue wasn't like the other aliens. His skin was a deep shade of ocean blue, wrinkled with age, and his 4 eyes had seen more of the galaxy than most. When he spotted the children being led past his stall, all 4 of his eyes widened in horror. "No," he whispered. "They didn't." The children walked in a line, each wearing silver collars. They looked tired but unbroken. Blue counted 12 of them. His hand shook as he watched the oldest girl, still trying to protect the smaller ones. He had seen that look before, centuries ago. That human determination. "Captain Bright." Blue called out to the Bright Scale leader. "A word, please." The scaled alien turned, his colors shifting to an annoyed pattern of red and gold. "Trader Blue, we are busy. These specimens must be processed for auction." Blue stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Those are human children. Yes, from a weak colony on a red planet. They will make excellent servants." Captain Bright's scales rippled with pride. "You fool," Blue hissed. "You must return them immediately." The captain laughed, a sound like clicking crystals. Other Bright Scales joined in, their scales flashing with amusement. "Return our prize." Captain Bright gestured at the children. "Look at them. Small, soft, no claws, no scales, no natural defenses. Their adults were even more pathetic, shooting tiny projectiles at our shields." Blue grabbed the captain's arm, an action that made every Bright Scale guard raise their weapons. "Listen to me." Blue's voice trembled. "I am 900 years old. I have seen empires rise and fall. And I was there, 3 centuries ago, when someone last took human children." The oldest girl, Kate, turned her head slightly, listening. "The species that took them," Blue continued, "they don't exist anymore. Do you understand? An entire civilization wiped out because they didn't understand what humans are." Captain Bright pulled his arm away. "That's just an old story. Humans are not like us." Blue pressed on. "Most species evolved to protect themselves. Humans, they evolved to protect their young. It's not just instinct. It's the core of who they are. Those pathetic adults you saw. They were holding back." A younger Bright Scale officer stepped forward. "Holding back from saving their offspring. That makes no sense." "Because they knew," Blue said quietly. "They knew that if they went all out right then, they might risk hitting the children. But now," he shuddered, "now there's nothing holding them back." Kate smiled slightly, and Blue noticed some of the other children standing straighter. "These humans," Blue gestured at the children, "they're not weak. Their bodies are soft because they never needed scales or claws. They made weapons instead. Their bodies are small because they never needed to be big. They made machines instead. Everything you see is weakness. That's what makes them deadly. They don't fight like animals. They fight like humans." Captain Bright's scales had shifted to an uncertain purple. "You're trying to scare us with stories." "I'm trying to save you," Blue countered. "Look at these children. Really look. Are they crying? Begging? No. They're watching. Learning. Waiting. Because they know what's coming." The captain glanced at the children, and for the first time, seemed to notice their calm determination. "You have 3 days," Blue said. "Return them, and maybe, you'll survive what's coming. After that, He spread his forearms in a helpless gesture. Not even I will be able to help you. Enough. Captain Bright's scales flushed deep red. Guards, remove this senile traitor. These specimens will be processed and sold as planned. As the guards led Blue away, he caught Kate's eye. She gave him the smallest nod. 3 days, he called out. After that, remember, you were warned. Later, in his private quarters, Blue sent a coded message into deep space. The humans would come. He knew that. And they would need information. Station locations, shield frequencies, security patterns. He looked out his viewport at the bright scale ships docked nearby. Such beautiful vessels, their hulls shifting colors like living rainbows. Soon, those same ships would be running in terror. And Blue would help the humans hunt them down, because sometimes the only way to be kind was to help end things quickly. The emergency meeting room at Earth Command was completely silent. On the main screen, the images from Mars played over and over. Alien ships descending, children being taken, parents watching helplessly. Admiral Jane Stone stood at the head of the table, her gray hair pulled back tightly, her face showing no emotion. But her hands were shaking. 12 children, she said finally, taken from New Hope Colony on Mars, ages 8 to 14. She pressed a button, and 12 young faces appeared on the screen. These are our children. The room remained quiet. This wasn't the noisy panic many might have expected. This was different. This was the quiet of predators preparing to hunt. Protocol 0 has been activated, Admiral Stone continued. For those who don't know what that means, it means we stop being nice. We stop being civilized. We get our children back, whatever the cost. A general raised his hand. The aliens' technology seems far advanced. Their shields. I don't care if they can block 1,000 suns. Admiral Stone cut him off. They took our children. We'll find a way through. The door opened, and 12 people walked in. The parents. Tom Miller led them, his face hard as stone. They all wore the same expression, not grief, not fear, but something much more dangerous. Pure determination. We volunteer, Tom said simply. Admiral Stone nodded. She had expected this. It's a suicide mission. We don't know where they took the children. We don't know how many ships they have. We don't care, one mother said. Her daughter, Amy, was the youngest taken, just 8 years old. We'll search every star if we have to. The Admiral pressed another button. A star map filled the room, holographic planets and systems floating around them. We've tracked their warp signature. They passed through here, here, and here. 3 points of light flashed, but then they vanished. Not vanished, a new voice said. Everyone turned. A message was playing on the secondary screen. The figure speaking wasn't human. It was blue-skinned, with 4 eyes and 4 arms. My name is Blue, the alien said. I am a trader who has seen your children. They are being taken to the slave markets of Station 7. I can help you find them. Tom stepped forward. Why would you help us? Because I have seen what happens when someone takes human children. I would spare the galaxy another war if I can. Blue's 4 eyes blinked sadly. Your children are brave. The older girl, Kate, she keeps the others strong. Tom's face softened for just a moment at the mention of his daughter. I can provide coordinates, shield frequencies, patrol patterns, Blue continued. But you must hurry. They plan to sell the children in 3 days. Admiral Stone looked at her technical team. Can we trust this transmission? It's genuine, one technician confirmed. And sir, we're also picking up strange signals from Mars. The alien ships left something behind. Some kind of energy signature. They're arrogant, Tom said. They think we're primitive. They probably didn't even bother hiding their tracks. Admiral Stone smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Then let's use that arrogance against them. She turned to the assembled parents. You have combat training. They all nodded. Every colonist did. Good, Because I'm putting you on our fastest stealth ship, the Ghost. It can carry 20 people, you 12, plus our best special forces team. She walked around the table, looking each parent in the eye. This isn't a military operation anymore. This is personal. You'll go in first, find the children, get them out. Meanwhile, our main fleet will provide the biggest distraction these aliens have ever seen. And if we run into resistance? Tom asked. Admiral Stone's expression hardened. Protocol 0. Remember, no rules, no mercy. They took children from their parents. Make them regret it. The parents nodded. They understood. 1 hour, the Admiral said. Get your gear. Say your goodbyes to those you're leaving behind. Because we're not stopping until we get those kids back. As they filed out, Admiral Stone looked back at the star map, at the blinking dots showing the aliens' trail. Computer, she said quietly, activate the Ghost. Full weapons, all experimental systems online. Authorization Stone Alpha 0. The computer beeped. Warning, some systems not fully tested. Risk of failure. Override. They have our children. Nothing else matters. The hunt was no longer coming. It had begun. The Ghost slid through space like a shadow between stars. Inside, Tom Miller studied the star maps Blue had provided. The alien trader had been true to his word, marking all known bright-scale patrol routes in red. Contact, whispered Lisa, Amy's mother, from the sensor station. 3 bright-scale ships ahead. The Special Forces commander, Jack, moved to the front viewport. The bright-scale ships glittered like jewels against the black of space, their hulls shifting colors in beautiful patterns. Beautiful, but no longer frightening. Remember, Jack said quietly, we're not here to fight. Not yet. Stealth is our friend. The Ghost's experimental stealth systems worked perfectly. The ship slipped past the bright-scale patrol without triggering a single alarm. Inside, 12 parents held their breath until the danger was past. 2 systems down. Tom marked off another section of the map. 1 more to go before we reach Station 7. A message flashed on their screen. Another transmission from Blue. Warning. Bright scales growing nervous. They sensed something coming. Main fleet gathering at Station 7. Good, Tom thought. Let them gather. Let them bring every ship they had. It would save humans the trouble of hunting them down later. The ship's comm system crackled. Admiral Stone's voice came through. Ghost team, report. On schedule, Jack responded. No engagement yet. Main fleet still behind us. Oh yes, the Admiral's voice held a grim satisfaction. All 100 ships, making enough noise to wake the dead. Every bright scale in 3 systems is looking at us. That was the plan. While the main human fleet approached openly, making as much commotion as possible, the Ghost would slip in from another direction entirely. The bright scales would never expect such primitive humans to think of such tactics. New contact. Lisa's voice was urgent but controlled. Big one. A bright scale destroyer. The massive ship appeared ahead of them. Its hull plates rippling with red and gold patterns. It was easily 20 times the size of the Ghost. Hold course, Jack ordered. Trust the stealth systems. They glided closer to the destroyer. Through the viewport, they could see its weapon ports, its shield generators, its energy spike. Lisa shouted, "They're activating weapons." "Impossible," Jack said. "They can't see us." But the destroyer's weapons were definitely charging. Somehow, they had detected the Ghost. New transmission from Blue, the comm officer reported. Says they've modified their sensors based on their study of the children. They're looking for human life signs now. Tom's hands clenched into fists. They had used data from the captured children to upgrade their systems. His daughter. They had used his daughter. Options? Jack asked. Tom looked at the other parents. They all nodded. We fight, Tom said simply. Jack smiled. Agreed. Dropping stealth. Weapons hot. The Ghost's experimental weapons came online. Systems that hadn't even been properly tested yet hummed to life. The destroyer fired first, a blast of energy that should have vaporized the smaller ship. But the Ghost moved like its namesake, sliding between the energy beams as if they were standing still. "Their ships are bigger," Jack said as they closed in. "Stronger, more heavily armed, but that makes them slow." The Ghost fired. Strange, new weapons that the Bright Scales had never seen before. Weapons designed specifically after studying the aliens' attack on Mars. The destroyer's shields flickered and died. "Impossible," they heard the Bright Scale captain shout over an open channel. "They're primitives." "No," Tom responded over the same channel. "We're parents." The Ghost fired again. The destroyer's beautiful hull cracked open like an egg, atmosphere venting into space. Emergency systems saved the crew, but the ship was dead in space. "Signal sent," Lisa reported. "They're calling for help." "Good," Jack said. "Let them call. Let them gather. Let them know what's coming." The Ghost shot past the crippled destroyer, heading deeper into Bright Scale space. Behind them, they could hear the alien crew transmitting warnings. "Unknown human vessel. Incredible speed. Weapons we've never seen." Tom looked at the star map again. They were getting closer. Just one more system to go. "Hold on, Kate," he whispered. "We're coming." In the distance, Station 7 waited. And somewhere on that station, 12 children were about to learn why their parents had always seemed so confident, so certain that they would come. Because they were human parents. And they had only just begun to fight. Kate sat in the holding cell on Station 7, watching the Bright Scale guards through half-closed eyes. 3 days had passed since their capture, but she hadn't been idle. None of the children had. "Remember," she whispered to the others, "just like we planned." The youngest, Amy, nodded while pretending to sleep. At 8 years old, she had already learned more about alien technology than the Bright Scales thought possible. All the children had. The guards didn't understand why their computer systems kept failing. They didn't know that human children on Mars learned basic programming before they could write. They didn't realize that every time they brought the children food, Amy was watching their finger movements on the control panels. "Feeding time," clicked one of the guards, his scales shimmering green and blue. Kate stood up slowly, making sure to look weak and tired. "The little ones are sleeping," she said softly. The guard moved closer to check on them. That was his mistake. Quick as lightning, Kate pressed the sequence of buttons Amy had memorized. The cell's force field flickered, just for a second. But that was all they needed. 2 older boys tackled the guard, while Kate grabbed his control device. "Now," she shouted. All 12 children sprang into action. This wasn't random violence. They had planned this for days. Each child knew their role. "Got it," called Ben, the tech-loving 13-year-old, as he rewired the guard's communicator. "Sending false signals now." The other guards would think everything was normal. For a while, at least. Kate used the stolen control device to open the other cells in their block. They weren't the only prisoners, but they were certainly the most organized. "Amy, remember the ventilation shaft you saw yesterday?" Kate asked. The little girl nodded eagerly. "It leads to the main control room. I saw their maps when they thought I was crying." Kate smiled. The Bright Scales had made so many mistakes. They thought human children were weak because they showed emotions. They didn't understand that humans could feel scared and still think clearly. "Listen up," Kate gathered the children. "We don't have much time. Ben, you and Lisa take the guard's communicator and keep sending those false signals. Amy, you'll guide us through the vents. The rest of you, grab anything we can use as tools." The children moved with purpose. On Mars, they had all played survival games. Their parents had insisted. Now they knew why. Through the ventilation systems they crawled, Amy leading the way with perfect memory. Below them, they could hear Bright Scale guards walking, completely unaware. "Stop," Amy whispered. "Control room below." Kate peered through the vent grating. 3 bright scales sat at their stations, their scales glowing with calm colors. They had no idea what was about to happen. "Ready with the shutdown sequence?" Kate asked Ben. He nodded, holding the modified communicator. "Just like the colony's emergency systems. Different tech, same principles." "On 3, Kate said. 1, 2. An alarm suddenly blared through the station. But it wasn't because of them. Multiple human ships detected. A voice shouted over the station speakers. "Destroyer Grayscale is not responding. All forces to battle stations." The children looked at each other with fierce grins. They knew what this meant. "They're here," Kate said simply. But they couldn't just wait for rescue now. They had work to do. "New plan," Kate announced. "Ben, crash their systems. Amy, show us the way to the docking bay. Everyone else, get ready to run." The next few minutes were chaos. Ben's virus, coded from memory of his Mars homework, shut down half the station's lights. Amy led them through a maze of corridors, avoiding the panicking bright scales. They reached the docking bay just as another alarm sounded, this one closer, more urgent. "Unknown human vessel approaching." The speakers blared. "All security forces." The message cut off as Ben's virus hit the communication systems. Through the massive bay windows, they could see a small, dark ship approaching. It moved like nothing they had ever seen before, dancing between bright-scale vessels. "That's not a normal ship," Ben said in awe. "No," Kate smiled, recognizing the design from her father's secret files. "That's the Ghost. That's our ride home." She turned to the others, standing straight like she'd seen her father do so many times. "Get ready," she said. "When that ship docks, we run. But until then," she held up the stolen control device, "let's give them something else to worry about." The children nodded, their eyes bright with determination. The bright scales were about to learn another lesson about humans. Never underestimate their children. Station 7's defensive grid lit up like a Christmas tree as the Ghost approached. Behind it, the main human fleet emerged from warp space, 100 ships strong. Admiral Stone's voice boomed across all channels. "This is your final warning," she announced to the station. "Return our children, or face the consequences." In the station's main control room, the bright scale commander's scales flashed angry red. "Primitives dare to threaten us. We have 500 ships. Our station shields are unbreakable." Blue watched from his trading post as chaos erupted. Bright scale ships moved to form a defensive wall around the station. They looked magnificent, their hulls shimmering with confident patterns of gold and red. They didn't notice the Ghost had disappeared. On the station's lower levels, alarms screamed as systems began failing one after another. The bright scales couldn't understand why. They didn't know their powerful station was being attacked from both outside and inside. They didn't know about Kate and the other children. The Ghost reappeared, but not where the bright scales expected. While their attention was fixed on the human fleet ahead, the stealth ship had circled behind the station. It attached itself to an emergency airlock that had mysteriously opened. "Ready?" Tom asked the other parents as they put on their combat suits. Jack, the Special Forces commander, checked his weapons. "Remember, we go room by room. No bright scale leaves behind us. No alerts get sent ahead of us." They breached the airlock. The first group of guards never knew what hit them. The humans moved like shadows, their weapons making no sound. The bright scales had expected primitives with simple guns. Instead, they met highly trained parents armed with technology specifically designed to counter bright scale defenses. 3 levels down, Tom said, checking the small device that showed human life signs. "They're moving, all 12 of them." "Moving?" Jack asked. A smile crossed Tom's face. "They're not waiting to be rescued. They're fighting back." Above them, the space battle had begun. The human fleet engaged the bright scale armada, But something was wrong. The magnificent alien ships found their weapons misfiring, their shields fluctuating. Impossible. The Brightscale commander raged as reports flooded in. How are they blocking our systems? That's when Blue stepped onto the command deck. They're not blocking them, he said calmly. Your systems are being attacked by coding viruses, created by children. What? Did you think those children were just sitting quietly in their cells? Blue's 4 eyes blinked. They're from Mars. They learn computer systems before they learn to write. And you gave them 3 days to study your technology. The commander's scales turned pale. Find those children. Now. But it was too late. Tom's team met the children halfway to the holding cells. Kate saw her father first. Dad, she shouted, running to him. We crashed their systems and... That's my girl. Tom hugged her quickly. But we need to move. Now. The children didn't need to be told twice. They fell into formation behind the adults, moving with a discipline that surprised even the Special Forces team. Station security is scrambling, Jack reported. They're finally figuring out what's happening. Let them come, Lisa said, checking her weapon. Her daughter Amy stood beside her, holding a stolen Brightscale control pad she had reprogrammed. They fought their way back to the Ghost, not with brute force, but with a combination of human determination and children's ingenuity. Amy used her stolen pad to seal doors behind them. Ven's viruses kept the station's internal defenses confused. The Brightscale commander watched in horror as his mighty station turned against him. Doors wouldn't open. Weapons wouldn't fire. And through it all, Blue stood watching. I warned you, the old traitor said softly. 3 days ago, I warned you. They're just primitives, the commander shouted. Just children. No, Blue replied. They're human children, and their parents have come for them. The Ghost detached from the station with all 24 humans safely aboard. 12 parents, 12 children. As they pulled away, Kate looked out the viewport at the battle raging around them. The mighty Brightscale fleet was in chaos, their perfect formations broken, their beautiful ships falling into disorder. They had learned too late what it meant to anger humans. They had learned too late what it meant to take their children. But most importantly, they had learned what Blue had tried to warn them about. Never underestimate humans protecting their young. 3 months after the rescue at Station 7, the galaxy was a very different place. The Brightscale ships no longer sparkled with confident colors. Those that survived now kept their scales dim, trying not to attract attention. At the New Hope colony on Mars, Kate sat with her father Tom in their garden dome, watching Earth rise over the red horizon. The other children, and their parents were there too, gathered for a special occasion. Blue had come to visit. The old traitor stood before the assembled humans, all 4 of his eyes blinking with emotion. The Brightscales have signed the treaty, he announced. They've agreed to never again trade in any sentient species, especially humans. Did they have a choice? Amy asked innocently from her mother's lap. Blue made a sound that might have been a laugh. No, little one. After what happened to their fleet and Station 7, they had no choice at all. The adults remembered that day well. After the Ghost had escaped with the children, Admiral Stone's fleet hadn't just defeated the Brightscales, they had made an example of them. Station 7's mighty shields had fallen in minutes, its defense grid destroyed by the very children it had tried to enslave. What happened to the Brightscale commander? Ben asked, looking up from the alien tablet he was studying, a gift from Blue. He was removed from power, Blue said diplomatically. The children didn't need to know more than that. The new leadership is much more respectful of humans. Tom stood up, facing the traitor. We never properly thanked you for your help. Blue raised all 4 hands in protest. I did not help you for thanks. I did it because... He paused, looking at the children. Because 500 years ago, I saw another species make the same mistake. They took human children, thinking humans were primitive. Easy targets. What happened to them? Kate asked. though she thought she knew the answer. "Nobody knows," Blue said quietly. "Because nobody survived to tell their story. That's why I had to help. The galaxy couldn't afford another war like that." A small alarm beeped, the garden dome's automated watering system. Kate got up to adjust it, her movements confident and sure. The other children went about their tasks too, helping maintain the dome that was their home. Blue watched them with wonder. "You know, the bright scales still don't understand. They think it was your weapons that defeated them. Your ships. Your technology. But it wasn't, was it?" Tom said, smiling at his daughter. "No," Blue agreed. "It was this. Children who know how to survive. Parents who would cross the galaxy to protect them. A species that turns its so-called weaknesses into strength." Amy walked up to Blue, holding out a small gift, a simple drawing of the traitor with his 4 arms and eyes, standing among the human children. "We made this for you," she said. Blue took it carefully, as if it were made of precious metal instead of paper. "I will keep this forever," he said solemnly. "Will others try?" Kate asked suddenly. "To take human children?" The adults grew quiet, but Blue shook his head. "No, young one. The story has spread. Every trading post, every space station, every colony now knows. Never take what belongs to humans, especially not their children." The sun was setting on Mars, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. The garden dome's lights came on automatically, making the plants cast long shadows. "I must go," Blue said. "But I leave you with this." He handed Tom a small device. "It will let you contact me if you ever need help again." "Thank you," Tom said. "But I don't think we'll need it. Word has spread about what happens when you threaten human children." Blue nodded. "Yes, though some say the stories are exaggerated. That a primitive species couldn't possibly defeat the mighty Brightscale fleet." Kate grinned. "Let them think that." Indeed, Blue's eyes twinkled. "Sometimes the best defense is letting others underestimate you." As Blue's ship lifted off from Mars, the children waved goodbye. They had learned much in their adventure. About strength, about courage, about what it meant to be human. But the galaxy had learned even more. That humans weren't primitive at all. That their children weren't weak. And that any species foolish enough to threaten them would learn these lessons the hard way. Just as the Brightscales had learned. Just as Blue had warned them they would. The end.